Hey Heather, how you doing? Happy Good Friday. I was working on my website and I'm not a dev by the way, so I'm just kind of fumbling my way through. And Clive and I we talk a lot and he's kind of like my Yoda. So anyway, I tend not to read a lot of other people's stuff because I just go full sprint and then it's stuff kind of pops up and I engage in content when catches my eye. And Clive told me to check out your stuff, and so I did, and I read it, and he said that you write exceptionally well. Like it's very engaging. I just read The Fear of Writing, and that was really really good. I wanted to do this video just to give you a little bit more sort of, I guess, thought, maybe some more inputs on how you might be able to actually go from Substack to here or get people from here to Substack. So, first up, curious, if you're doing these images, they're great. You've got like these are really, really, really lovely. Like there's just a very beautiful aesthetic to it. You've got a very nice style. The question now is how do you then translate that into eye-catching content onto LinkedIn? And I think what it really comes down to is doing it in a way that will highlight, obviously, like people are fickle on LinkedIn. And so, for me, my images are a big part of obviously my aesthetic now, and I can see that in yours. So, what I would suggest, and then it comes back to some of those things Clive was saying, where is your audience? Where do you want them to go? And then what is the purpose of that output? Like, what do you want them to do? So that last article that so I'll read the others actually. So I read this one, and yeah, it's like reading this novel, and I'm just going through, and I like how you've got these little highlight sections out here, and then I had to get to the bottom, and I was just like, oh, okay, fine. Where's the next piece? But people on LinkedIn have got very short attention span, so it's obviously like the Facebook of social, LinkedIn is the Facebook equivalent. So what you've got to think is, how would you use this image here? It's a lovely image, and then how would you use that? And then what parts or what components of your copy would you use to draw people in? Having read that, it would make sense to me that you would do it as article, and you've actually said that in article format. I don't do a lot of articles, so obviously in this sort of format here. The image would sit here, and then I think it's a case of what are the flashy bits? Not the flashy bits, but what are the bits that are going to get people to read? So obviously the start, you got me going, and then and there's a lot, like you sort of go in, but then I think you need to have something at the end or at the start, just say something about, how do you, like right at the end, you talk about, you know, millions of dollars were made, Rick turns up, and, no credit, all that. I think there's a lot of people that have gone through this. And I think, how do you turn that maybe into the hook at the beginning to bring people back along with the image? What I could suggest is it comes down to experimentation. And so the people that have actually sent these types of videos while I've done sprints, let me show you. You're going to have to experiment. And, if you, I sort of show a lot of people this. So when you look at my content, it's evolved. This is what it looks like now, but you can see there's a distinct, like it kind of changes. It gets a little bit darker and it gets a bit more cartoony. And here it's a little bit lighter, and then the border's a bit thicker. And at every turn, I'm constantly just trying new things. But what I don't do, and this is probably a slightly more advanced like I'm not a UX, I'm a salesperson, just so you know. I'm a sales and go-to-market person. So I'm not a UX, I'm not a designer. All of this is just like self-taught. But what I tend to do is I don't when I experiment in periods. Like I don't do like one post and then another post and then another, and they're all just vastly different. And I see a lot of people when they do these sprints and ship 30 and I'm like, what are you doing? Like you've got no data to then support what's going. Like you've just tried so many different experiments with no sort of linear view of like this makes sense. And I tried, there's no sort of system to it. So you can see here, this is a period where I didn't understand how gradients worked on Canva. That's why everything is a little bit dark, a little bit gray. And then here, this is like really early. This is when I was doing just image, like quote graphics, like just pure quotes. My it's embarrassing now. My first image generate, first couple of image generations, and this whole Michael Jordan thing. This is just something that I grew up with as a kid, and you can see there's a couple of family things here and there. But this is what it looked like. This is what my content looked like. The Joker, reoccurring theme over 2 years. I've done some stuff in Jerry Seinfeld. There's Larry Bird, which I did a post. You see Michael Jordan. And then I got some work stuff. This is like really, really early work stuff. Like this is before I got into writing. So I guess my final sort of comments would be, this is great. This is really great. My question to you is like, what is the purpose of your writing here? Is it more prose to try and just get a creative outlet out for you and to get audience around that? Or is there, like, I can see that there's a bit of there's a theme here, but are you trying to get in people to sign up for your offer, which is coaching, or like you talk about stewardship in software development, stuff like that? Like what is the purpose of that? Just so that I can give you some clarity on that, where I'm coming from. I'm a sales and go-to-market person in SaaS. I've been doing that for over 10 years. Part of that, I was a financial advisor, sold life insurance products at a bank to medicos. When I did this whole writing thing initially, I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting, but it was a view to actually build sales training for startups, because I thought the old models of consultancy where they're stripping out huge amounts of working capital for a consultant, $2,000 a day or $1,500 a day with no skin in the game, and this capital is like really, really important to the startup, I thought could be done very differently. But as it turned out, as I started to write, I thought maybe there's this ghostwriting sort of angle to it. And what I realized that when I was doing these sprints and I was writing about sales, which is like way down here, this sort of stuff, I had some old sales friends, people that I'd worked with at sold to, they started to DM me and they started to send messages and they said, hey, that's really great. Keep up the good work. It's really encouraging, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then conversations would start and I'd have meetings with some old friends, and then that transpired into like, is there an opportunity to see if they could, buy the services of the company that I'm working for. So that's how for me, that's how ghostwriting sort of happened. But as I have been spending time with Clive over the last 2, 3 years, Vernon and Adrian, we started to narrow down on this. We had a couple of views on what we saw in the content space, and I call them the AI bros and the content bros. And what it was that there's all this narrative and language around, hey, put up content and you'll get like 10 leads, 5 leads, and blah, blah, blah. But having been in enterprise SaaS, like that, it's just BS. It just doesn't happen like that. Sales cycles take a really long time. Pipeline development takes a really long time. Getting to an executive takes a really, really long time. You've got to build up business cases. You've got to wade through, the swamp to try and get a deal. So I started writing about that a little bit, and then it started to hone in on executive ghostwriting, and then I started to create language around that. And so the language that I'm using now for LinkedIn content for executives is micro thought leadership. So thought leadership, but micro. And the whole thought leadership stuff has come from the reports that I've been reading, which is Edelman, Gartner, all that sort of stuff. And the market is moving towards thought leadership, saying, you know, B2B organizations are now engaging in thought leadership because they see that more as trustworthy than traditional marketing. So that's where it's gone. So over a period of time, my content has now started to develop the messaging. But before that, I was learning how to actually do pretty images and content, and then fuse the two ideas with the graphics. I can see that you've already got those skills. I'm assuming that you're using some form of generative AI, but you understand how it works. I think what it is now is that you use some of this into, I'll bring up my Canva. You need to bring that into obviously a format that you can then create some sort of branding in LinkedIn, because you've already got the raw assets here, which you're putting in. And then it's a case of then how do you make that relevant in a LinkedIn? And so you can see with mine, all the images, so a couple of things with my stuff. When I do a quote graphic, actually, this is what I call a complex image. You'll see on the back here, There's all these little tiles. I repurpose everything. There's no waste at all. I repurpose all of these tiles. It take me a long time to work out how to do it properly. I've got comics here. So this is like a single page comic now, but I've got tiled comics as well. And these are all just influences that I grew up with, like just stuff that I was into as a kid. And I've now just started to morph that into content. And because I've done that over such a long period of time, and because I was in sales and go to market, I would always do my research on my ICP. So I'd look at the history, I'd see where they were from. And so when I read stuff on the content bros or the AI bros, and and they've like had 6 months in an agency and they're 2 months out of university and stuff like that, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like you just, that's not how, it's not how B2B buys, unless you're talking about very small agency founders and stuff like that. So that's why I know it's all BS, and I can sort of look past that. But you can see here, I've got the branding on my content, like this little brain logo, and that was something that I made. Just it was a post, and I made it. And I know that you've got your logos and stuff like that. So just to wrap this up about you, how would you then think about creating these images to draw in people from LinkedIn to then go to your Substack? So this, for example, here, could you have some branding on that? Maybe not. It's up to you. But what you're doing is just creating that brand that people start to see, and I can see that in your content, like just the way that you write. So I'm going to read through some other stuff. Like there's a theme, there's a style. It's great. It's really great. We need we need more of this sort of stuff online. Even here, like there's that aesthetic is just coming through. Like that is coming through here. Like you can see it. It's really good. This absolutely needs to be exposed onto LinkedIn. But I guess it just comes down to what is the purpose, and that purpose obviously is, like are your clients, are your ICP on LinkedIn? Do you want them to come here to read more long form content? And just as an FYI, I'm at that point where I'm thinking like I need to do more long form stuff to actually start creating deeper IP, a bit of thought leadership around the stuff that, why? Because when I look at this sort of stuff, this effectively is lolly water candy type sort of content. I can tell a story very quickly, and I think writing short form it isn't easy, but there is a point where people are going to want to go through the catalog and go like, what are you really about? So part of that comes back to me doing some carousels now, and just to give you a bit of an insight. So all of these I start to repurpose. Where was it? So this is one that I'm producing for like how to repurpose. I'm using the tiles. This is a post. I actually created this for this one first, but I wanted to get a post out, so I just used this instead as a one pager. And then you can see how I'm developing this carousel. It looks a little bit more corporate. So it'll have more images here. There's a little bit more narrative. So it's not like the fast click through sort of stuff. It may or may not work. It doesn't really matter. But what I'm doing is I'm experimenting. I'm experimenting with my content in a content format that I think may resonate with executives in high growth startups and scale ups, well-funded companies. I'm not chasing small companies. I'm chasing companies that I've worked for, companies that I would sell to, because I know they've got money, and I know they've got money that isn't somebody's money who's a founder, if that makes sense. So anyway, hope you have a great Easter. I'll see you online. Thought I'd just do this quick video. I was just inspired after I read that content, and yeah, speak soon. God bless.